A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms is a TV show about one man's journey from being a measly hedge knight to one of the most storied, chivalric idols in all of Westeros. It's the story of Ser Duncan the Tall, who, until his squire challenged him on his name, didn't even know Dunk was short for Duncan. Dunk is a guy who comes off as innocent, earnest, determined, and above all, honest. His mentor, Ser Arlan of Pennytree, used to call him dumb as a stump and thick as a castle wall when referring to his intelligence, and in many ways he was correct. So if Dunk is so stupid and honest, then he must actually have been knighted by Ser Arlan, right? Well, we wouldn't be making this video if there was a clear-cut answer to that, so stay with us until the very end, where I reveal to you the darkest secret of one of the brightest knights in all of Westeros. Without further ado, this is Dunk a Real Knight? Explained.
Ser Arlan taught me sword and shield, away from castles and servants.
Dunk served the knight, but did he get knighted? The clues and the truth. If you guys watched the first episode of A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms carefully, you'd have noticed a particular moment in there that hints at Dunk's status as a knight. When he's talking to the Master of Games at Ashford, he tells him that he was knighted by Ser Arlan of Pennytree, and the only witness to his dubbing was a robin in a tree, because Arlan decided to knight him on his deathbed. He says that when he was growing up with Ser Arlan, the old man wanted him to become a true and just knight like himself. But then we get a flashback scene where we see Dunk ask Arlan that same question, and Arlan's response is spitting out the pit of a fruit. This scene is purposely left ambiguous because the fact is, verifying Dunk's knighthood is a bigger deal than anyone realises. In the Seven Kingdoms, lying about one's post and title is a serious crime. The Master of Games' little joke about the Ashford chair, which is equivalent to a Judas cradle in real life, is just a joke when he says it, but then he follows it up by saying the Reach is not the Riverlands, which suggests that if Dunk was in another place, he'd have a much tougher time of trying to make his lie fly. All the Master of Games needs is someone who can vouch that Ser Arlan was a knight, because he was ready to take Dunk's word for his own knightly status. But the thing is, perhaps he should have used the Ashford chair metaphor to get the truth out of the big lug, because it's clear to us that Dunk was simply lying about being a knight. If you go back and watch that episode, every time Dunk talks about himself, he calls himself Ser Dunk. Now, to most people in Westerosi society, that comes off as a vanity statement that even a hedge knight would make to distinguish himself from sellswords and men-at-arms in their ilk. Knights often like declaring their status in this society, so most people don't bat an eye at Dunk when he quote-unquote corrects them, because in their minds this is not another kid trying to get knightly fame. But to us as the audience, it feels more like he's trying to convince himself that he's a knight, and that he's practicing how to introduce himself for future endeavours, because he knows that once he commits to participating in the tourney at Ashford, there's no going back. In the opening sequence of the episode, Dunk thinks back on the many things that Ser Arlan taught him growing up, including that one time he felt Arlan hit him without cause, because he supposedly stole a pie. But not once does he think of his own dubbing, and the lie becomes even more glaringly obvious when his first thought after burying Arlan is to sell his 3 horses and his sword, so he can make enough coin to eat like a king for a year or two. The episode later makes it a point to impress upon us that you can't be a knight without a horse, and yet Dunk's first thought was to sell Arlan's horses before he decided to try his luck on the lists. He even considered joining the City Watch of Lannisport, which is much less prestigious than King's Landing's City Watch, and not in a position of command. Mind you, now it is true that many knights have served in as gold cloaks. Just look at Sir Harwin Strong from the House of the Dragon. But those appointments weren't choices, they were commands, and the bulk of the City Watch is made up of men who are desperate for a stable income or just can't stay away from violence. Dunk was in that exact same position before he decided to lie about his dubbing, and for a guy as thick as a castle wall, he did a pretty good job of sticking to his falsehood. What follows from here on out is a spoiler for the rest of Season 1, so if you don't want to hear it, skip ahead. But if you do, then stay right here, because Dunk basically confirms he's a liar twice. The first time is when he realises Egg is not pretending to be a prince. He's pretending to be a commoner so he can actually squire for Dunk. In the Hedge Knight, he thinks to himself that he thought Egg was like him, but turns out he wasn't. What he meant was he thought Egg was lying like he was, but the truth is he wasn't. Later on in the series, Sir Raymond Fossaway, the kid who helped Dunk enter Lionel Baratheon's pavilion in episode 1, asks him to knight him before they can participate in the trial of 7, because tradition requires 14 knights to be participants overall. Dunk hesitates from doing so because, despite knowing any knight can make a knight, he also doesn't know the exact wording that makes a common soldier an anointed knight. And then there's his inner monologue during the trial itself, where when things are going south for him, he basically admits that there isn't even a hedge knight. Don't take our word for it, look up the novella because it's right there. And in the next Dunk and Egg novella, titled Sword and Sword, when a lady asks Dunk about his dubbing, he skirts around the question, and instead of saying Ser Arlan knighted him outright, he says that no one else was like to do it. So the evidence is all there. Ser Duncan the Tall, legendary Kingsguard member and Lord Commander, who has 4 pages dedicated in the White Book of the TV franchise's timeline, is not even a real knight. He's a guy who gambled on a lie and made it big. Not because he successfully fooled everyone, but because he successfully embodied the ideals of a true knight. That is something that becomes evident as you read his stories, or watch them play out in TV, because Dunk might be dumb as a stump, but chivalry and the drive to do the right thing no matter the circumstances innate for him. That's how he manages to evade being questioned about his knighthood too much post-Ashford, because in that fateful tournament he proves that real knights still exist and that Sir isn't just a title. Actions speak louder than words, and Dunk might not be eloquent when it comes to making a speech, but his fists find the right culprit in any given scenario 10 times out of 10. That alone puts him above most Westerosi knights from his era, so yes, Dunk is a knight in all the ways that matter. But something must have changed between the Hedge Knight novella and the time he becomes a Kingsguard, because what he refuses to do for Raymond Fossaway, he later does for Egg's firstborn son, so that begs the question.
You may be wise to run.
Won't they kill me if I run?
So when did Dunk become a knight officially? Our best guess is that Dunk officially became a knight when he was inducted into the Kingsguard. The Kingsguard's vows and dubbing ceremony hasn't been seen in full detail in the entire series. In fact, the only time we get details on someone receiving their white cloak is when we hear about Jaime's dubbing. He was knighted by Sir Arthur Dayne in the aftermath of the Kingswood Brotherhood campaign, but then he was knighted again in a way when he was named to the Kingsguard by the White Bull Geralt Hightower himself. This makes sense just because it's only after Dunk gets his white cloak that he becomes an officially celebrated figure, having spent much of his time defending his king and his king's family from threats both external and internal. But on a poetic level, we'd say that Dunk was knighted in the Hedge Knight itself, by the swords of both Steely Pate and the Crown Prince at the time, Baelor Breakspear Targaryen. Steely Pate's words don't exactly count as much because he is the blacksmith who tells Dunk that he remembered his vows when other knights didn't. It's true, yes, but in the grand scheme of things, it's an observation that anyone could have made, only Pate dared to put it into words. Prince Baelor is a different story, however, because when he pulled up for the trial of the Seven on the opposing side of his own blood and brothers, it was confirmation that he believed in Dunk's knighthood regardless of his spurs, and who dubbed him and why. Dunk did the one thing that no one else was willing to do in Ashford. He protected the weak and innocent from the rich and strong, despite knowing that his act was a capital offence. He should have been hung for striking a prince, especially the prince he chose to punch, and yet he was given a trial by combat because even the people judging his sentence were aware of the fact that what Dunk did was necessary, followed common sense, and just plain old decent. If they hanged him that day, Westerosi society would have gone full-blown cynic and started looking all knights as people who do not uphold their oaths. Ironically enough, Dunk never swore that oath, yet he held it to the end of his days. It's even possible that after becoming a Kingsguard, he got over his fear of how to dub people as knights the right way, because he spent his entire life around Egg, and he must have seen Egg's children grow up, possibly trained them as well. So if it is revealed that Ser Duncan the Tall knighted Prince Duncan the Small, that would create a narrative synergy that George R. R. Martin is particularly fond of creating, and would also prove once and for all that Dunk finally became a knight despite pretending to be one for decades. So the short answer to the question we posed in this video's title is no. Dunk is not a knight officially. He's pretending to be one. He wasn't anointed with the 7 oils, no one put a blade to his shoulders and bade him rise. He just decided to be one because it had been his childhood dream to become a knight, and because he thought it was what Ser Arlan would have wanted for him. The longer answer is why you've stayed with us to the end of this video, and for that, we're grateful for you guys. But having said that, this is also where we part ways because that's all we've got for you. Let us know your thoughts on whether Dunk is actually a knight and if that matters or not, down in the comments section. Like, share and subscribe to our channel for more Seven Kingdoms content, and we will see you guys real soon with another video. Until then, stay safe, and if you decide to lie in your resume, just make sure you back it up with your actions the way Dunk does.